All right, what's up, guys? Today we're talking how to build a booty. It seems like every girl out there, it seems like the thing that everybody females want these days is the big, round, plump booty. And we're guys, but we lift, we understand what it takes to build muscle. What makes a booty, right? It's muscle, isn't it?
If you want actual non-surgical glutes and booty gains, it's going to be in the gym. You got to still build your glutes up still. That's the strongest, most important muscle of the body, if you ask me in general. Whether you're male, whether you're female, you want to have the ability to activate your glutes, to build your glutes, whether it be for functional fitness or just aesthetic looks, which is more the popularity now. They want to have a nice looking glute.
Yeah. So let's start with what people are doing right and what are people doing wrong on approach to building that butt.
And that's one thing too. Everyone's going to have their own approach. They look at all these gurus or people who they see, and they'll say do this and do that. Just my experience as a coach for the last 10 years, a lot of times we don't have the good base. So in my opinion, like I said, glutes being the most dominant muscle in the body, the strongest, the biggest, it should be at least when you're training. So a lot of times people don't have a very strong core. In my opinion, if your core is not very strong, you're not going to be able to actually turn on your glutes. I even like to say your glutes are part of your core, in my opinion.
Okay.
When you go to brace yourself and stabilize under a squat bar, you should be able to engage your core, you should be able to engage your glutes. So a lot of women and men, because a lot of men want to build glutes as well, they don't know how to turn on their glutes because they don't have a very good, strong core.
Okay.
So core being your foundation, having a very strong core, knowing how to turn your core on will help out with glute activation. That's the first thing I always say, is having a very good, strong core, knowing how to turn on your core in general.
How do you build a strong core?
A strong core is just knowing how to actually train your abs, and that can be not just your abs, that can be your serratus, that can be your triceps abdominis. So there's just your abs in general, and that's even your lower back. People don't think that your lower back is part of your core as well. It's going to be a full circle.
Yeah.
So typically, if you can actually engage your glutes and engage your lower back and engage your core, of course, all that's going to be worked whenever you're doing any kind of movement. We can talk about movements as well. Like, okay, well, I can engage my core. I've got a strong core, Cordell. But I still can't get my glutes to go. Then you want to move on from your core to your actual base. How's your footing? Is your feeting good? Do you actually have a proper base with your feet? Do you know how to actually, quote unquote, spread the floor to where you're actually creating a tripod to turn on your actual lower body? Because here's the thing, and it's so controversial, is like, I only want to grow my glutes. I don't want to grow tree trunks. I don't want my cast any bigger.
Like you can, that spot reduce.
Yeah, I want to skip over.
Spot grow, right?
Yeah. And there's doctors and PTs who have programs, booty builder programs for guys and girls that can do that. But I would say, why neglect a muscle? You're going to create an imbalance. Then if you're not training your hamstrings, your glutes, and everything in unison, you're going to create more imbalances. You're going to end up getting hurt. And think about the ability that you might have to get more growth if you're actually engaging your hamstrings and your quads and everything else together. But like I was saying, back to the movements wise, some people might say, oh, the best way to get a booty, and this might be a guy or girl with great glutes, is to squat. I might be like, no, I totally disagree with you. In my opinion, the best way to build glute development is to do a thrust. Hip hinge or hip thrust. That's strictly loading your glutes, and you have only a very short range of motion for your glutes before you're turning on your hamstrings and your quads as well. So if you want to really focus on building your glutes, you want to have that range of motion be within glute range. That's just my opinion as well. And then it's more so, okay, how do I do that? It's more so having them go under the bar and actually see how they actually direct their hips. That's another thing too, having very strong hips and having very strong glutes go hand in hand as well. Knowing how to turn your hips on, knowing how to move your hips. A lot of women too. The second thing I would say, that I have male and female clients, and people probably be like, yeah, it's probably the case with me too, is they have very weak core and they have very little to no mobility in their hips and their glutes. They can't move. They don't know how to actually squeeze their glutes. They don't have mobility. So if you have those women who have very nice physiques, and they've always had nice physiques their entire life because they've been athletes their entire life. They've always been maybe gymnasts or cheerleaders, and you see these girls doing backflips and handstands. And they have a great set of glutes. In order to do, be a cheerleader or be an athlete like that, as a female, to do those kind of movements, you have to actually have a strong core. To do a backflip and do a cartwheel and all this, you got to have a very strong core. And then on top of that too, if you're stiff as a log, you're not going to be able to, put your foot behind your head or do the splits or cartwheels. So you have to have very good mobility. And a lot of these women, when you have very good mobility, once you actually got stronger in a sense of mobility and functional, that doesn't really go away. Like for us, muscle-wise, you build muscle, you stop working out, it goes away. With mobility and actual just fitness in the sense of being able to actually stretch and move around, once you've actually put your body through that threshold and actually accomplish that, you don't really lose that at all. There's women who I train that can take their foot and put it behind their head, and they've been doing it since high school, and they maybe do it like once a year, and they can still do it with no problem.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's wild. And then they have great glute development because they know how to actually turn everything on to actually directly involve their glutes, or they want to involve their glutes. And the main thing about it is, the key word is muscle-mind connection.
I was just about to say
and
that.
I had a feeling that's
just about to say
that's
that.
what we were kind of going to get at next. Try beating you to it is so that's the thing with bicep curls. People have great biceps, they have really good muscle-mind connection. If you're squatting under the bar and your coach has the greatest glutes in the world, and she's like, when you squat, or he's like, when you squat, you feel your glutes, focus on that. And you
driving of your glutes.
Yeah, and
engaging your glutes.
Engage all that.
Using your glutes.
And you don't feel squat when you do it. It could be two things. Either you don't have that muscle-mind connection, or that movement just isn't for you. They have so many movements for glute development, and it's because every movement isn't going to work the same for everybody.
Because your legs are longer, your body shaped differently, different, torso, different leverage.
All of that, just
that mind-muscle connection. I cannot stress it enough. I see people at the gym all the time benching 3 plates a side, and the chest is flat, and they're using the chest, but the chest is never, ever, ever going to grow from the way they're doing it.
Right.
And I'll be half a plate, 1 plate, chest out, literally squeezing through the motion, making that muscle do the work that I'm trying to get it to do.
Yep.
And that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Exactly.
If you're trying to grow your glute has got to do the work.
The entire time.
Whether that's a lunge or a squat or a deadlift or a hip thrust.
Yeah. And it's not about being sore next day. Oh, I did my glutes, I'm sore as hell. Like, did you feel the glute go through the entire range of motion the entire time? Did you feel the activation the entire time? Like you can do, it's not really about, there's studies showing it's not being about the more sore you are after you work out, the better you train, good job. No, it's about, did I have a very good engagement of that muscle I was trying to train that workout? And
would you measure that with the pump that you get in that muscle? Do you think that's a good way of measuring that?
That's one variable you can use as well, but the main thing about it is what you were saying when you're going through that range of motion. Like when you say, go back to squatting, everyone still for the most part thinks that squatting is how you get good glutes. You go from the squat, you go to descend, and your glutes are engaged the entire time. You're going down the negative portion of the movement, and then you go back up. Are your glutes engaged the entire time? If you're able to engage your that muscle the entire time, the eccentric, the concentric, the entire time of the workout, that's what your goal is. We're talking about bodybuilding, that is. So bodybuilding is building muscle in general. People think bodybuilding is like, oh, I'm on not competitive bodybuilding. People who actually want to build muscle,
build a body, yeah.
Bodybuilding is literally going to the gym or whatever you're doing weight training wise is when you're trying to build muscle. We're not talking about competitive bodybuilding at all. So if your goal is, we'll say this, booty building. Oh, I know what that is. Bodybuilding, booty building, not the same thing, but yeah, it is. When you're actually trying to booty build, you want to feel that glute through every single range of motion that you're putting it through.
Gotcha.
And if you don't, it could be that movement just isn't for you, or secondly, it could just be you don't have that range of motion yet to get that movement through that glute. And that's the same way, like for instance, if we're talking back movements for 1 second, you're doing a seated row, and you're focusing on your mid and lower back, and you're only feeling your upper back. It could just be your mid lower back is weak. It could be the range of motion. It could be that movement just isn't for you for that particular
angle,
area, the angle. Same idea with your glutes, but when it comes to having a good base, like you said, bench pressing, I think any kind of pressing movement is like your base for building a chest. I think any kind of squatting or lunging or thrusting is a good base for your glutes.
Generally compound, right?
Keyword, compound movement. For those who know what that is, compound movement's like a movement that's going to involve all your dominant muscles for that particular movement.
Yeah, so compound meaning using more than one joint and one muscle, and isolation using one joint, one muscle.
Right.
So chin up is a compound, a bicep curl is isolation. Hip thrust is isolation, a squat is a compound. And then, so we were talking about earlier is using compound exercise, like if you're just getting started or you're really trying to get some serious muscle, especially on your glutes, building a base, right?
Yep.
With compound exercises.
Right.
And the cool thing about compound exercise is it uses multiple muscles, allows you to use more weight, and therefore it grows
Yeah.
bigger muscles, doesn't it?
And we know why too, because you can create more of a stimulus. You can load a lot more weight on a hip thrust or a squat opposed to doing a kickback.
Yeah, a one-plate kickback or
Mm-hmm.
I've seen females on 50.
Yeah, they're stronger than us usually.
Yeah, lunges with 50 pounds per hand.
Yeah,
I guarantee they got some pretty good glutes by doing so.
So if you can load a lot of weight onto one movement, that's going to create that stimulus for sure. As long as you can take it through the range of motion still and do everything correctly with that particular amount of weight, that's like I said before, that's your base, is building that nice base with those particular movements. And then from there, women want to have, I want to have my medius part of my glutes be really fat here, and I want my minimus to be good here. You want all this type of shape, and guys too, of course, too. So then you would throw in the accessories to get the shape. But if you don't have a good
to do the fine tuning,
if you don't have a good base first, to where you don't have any development at all, like.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just getting started and you're doing kickbacks, you're going to be doing kickbacks for a long time, and it's still not going to work.
In my opinion, too,
But if you squat and you deadlift and you time and attention being probably the number one thing too.
Yeah.
And I'll get you to explain, what is time and attention?
Yeah. It's more so that negative, phase of the movement. Say you're squatting. It's more so we'll say just in general the hardest part of the movement. So typically when you're doing a curl, the negative is on the way down. So if you're doing a time and attention, that is that negative movement. So same thing with squatting. If you're descending down and you're taking your time to really control the movement, that's really when you're creating that stimulus for growth, development. Your body has to adapt to create that stimulus, and then when your body adapts, it's going to get two things. It's going to either get stronger or it's going to get more size, or do both. And if you're just going through the motion, you're not really doing quite anything at all. If you're going negative through the motion, but you're not actually engaging or feeling what you need to feel, it could be indirectly growth opposed to actual direct growth. So you might want to find a movement that you can do time and attention, and that's a really key tool to implement when you're doing any kind of movement that lacks growth or needs a shock, or you want to just really destroy it in the gym that day.
And you got time and attention, right? When that muscle, you're using the muscle you're trying to use,
right,
and B, it's burning like crazy. And it's because you're twice as strong on your negative. And the general rule is go down twice as, whatever it takes to go up, go down twice as slow on the way down. That's the general rule.
Doesn't feel good, but it's needed.
And honestly, it sucks. And if you're throwing the weight up and dropping it, you're losing probably more than half the exercise, to be honest.
Wasting energy.
So knowing it's glute exercise, targeting your glutes, time under tension, trying to keep those other muscles out while you do it.
Right.
It's understanding what you're doing and doing it for a reason.
Right.
And I feel like 90% of the people just go through the motion.
Right.
Another example I see would be like a fly. People literally just are flying, and you don't see the chest being activated. The chest is sunk in. You might get stronger.
Right.
Your chest is never going to grow.
That's the thing.
I'm not sure about. I only use maybe 2-3 plates a side on cable flies.
Right.
But my chest is pumped afterwards because I'm making that muscle work, and that is the secret.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people like going heavy as possible because they feel good getting strong.
And it's an ego thing too.
And women are the same way too, which is fine, ladies. But if you notice that, hey, I'm not getting the growth that I want at this point, let me change the tempo up. Let me try time and attention. Let me try more negative. Let me try more drop sets, giant sets. Because getting strong is great, but strength doesn't create stimulus for growth necessarily.
No, it doesn't, does it? It can, but it can also lead to injuries and things as well.
That too. Getting stronger doesn't mean your muscles are getting bigger. That's just kind of how people think, the more I can lift, the heavier I train, the stronger and bigger I'll grow. That's not quite the same. We can even look at powerlifters and bodybuilders. Bodybuilders typically look big and strong, but they're not anywhere close to.
They're not functional.
Powerlifter, powerlifter, they can bench 1,000 pounds. Look like they don't even work out at all. Some of them, they're big, huge guys with no aesthetics because they're training for strength. Opposed to bodybuilders have maybe little to no strength, but they're training for aesthetics. So looks can be deceiving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I hope you got some value out of that. But biggest tips is it's a glute exercise, making your glute do the work.
Yeah, do I feel my glutes?
Yeah, building that core where you're able to activate your glutes, activate even any muscle really, activate the muscle you're trying to work. And that mind-muscle connection, hey, my mind, it's a quad exercise, therefore my quad is doing the work. time under tension, making sure that muscle is actually under tension the whole time.
Right.
This is an analogy I used to use with my clients is if you've got a balloon and you're blowing it up and you're like, and in between you're letting it out, the air's coming out, opposed to like, that's the way I look at when I'm doing weights. I'm not coming up, I'm not locking out.
Right, okay. Yeah,
I'm not locking it out. I'm not taking that rest.
That's a smart way to look at it.
I'm like, I'm up, I'm straight back down, but I'm slow. I'm up, I'm straight back down, but I'm slow. And all of a sudden, like that muscle supposed to be working is working, and it's hurting, and it's burning, and I'm weak. But it's growing and it's working, right?
Yeah, we don't like that mentally, but that's going to mentally get us stronger. Our bodies want to us. That's going to create that stimulus for sure.
Take the harder approach.
Yeah,
because that is what works.
Yeah, strength is more of a skill that when people lift for strength, bodybuilding needs to become, even bodybuilding needs to become more of a skill too, where you keep that in mind. Like you mentioned, that's a good analogy to use, is keeping the tension. If we feel that we can, top of the squat and we can rest,
and you're looking around. You need to take that out.
Yeah, you need to maybe stop at the top and be a split second.
Take 2 inches off the top, and all of a sudden you're like, oh damn, that made all the difference.
Push yourself, especially if you're not growing. Now, if you're growing, then kudos to you. But if you're not, you probably need to train a little harder and smarter still.
And then just one more tip is, if someone's got a body that you want, guy or girl, or especially booty, go up and ask them questions. Reach out to them. Most successful people, most people look the part, are generally pretty happy to share information, right?
I agree.
So don't be shy to ask questions. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.